What's up, guys? Today we're talking about all my top waiver wire pickups for Week 15 for your semifinal matchups coming right up. And what is up, everyone? You're listening to the Gridiron Fantasy Football podcast for Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. And I'm Chip, I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you don't miss any more episodes and help support the show. It means a lot. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about all of the Week 15 waiver wire pickups, all the top guys on my list, and try to help you win in the semifinals for your fantasy playoffs to get you to the championship game. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about the crazy Monday Night Football game. I mean, this was by far probably the game of the year. The Ravens were able to win this in the last minute, 47-42 against the Cleveland Browns. And, this game started off kind of slow. It was, just one of those games where it just got better as the game went on. And when it comes to the fantasy standpoint, Lamar Jackson continues to show up. I mean, he only had 163 yards and a touchdown passing. However, he had 2 touchdowns and over 124 yards rushing. So great game from Lamar Jackson. If you held on to Lamar Jackson and played him, he is going to do really good things in the next coming couple weeks. So Lamar Jackson continues to look like the Lamar Jackson from last year. And on the Cleveland side of the ball, Baker Mayfield, it started off pretty crappy for him, but he turned it on in the second half. He ended the game with 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, but also gave you a rushing touchdown. So Baker Mayfield continues to be a very consistent player in the last few weeks, and hopefully that continues going into week 15 against the Giants. But great game from Baker Mayfield. When it comes to running the ball, like I said, Lamar Jackson, he led the Ravens with 9 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. You had J.K. Dobbins get 13 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown. And Gus Edwards, 7 carries for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns. So big rushing game. I mean, this was 9 rushing touchdowns between the two teams, which is crazy to think about. But Nick Chubb, 17 carries for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had a touchdown. And then, like I said, Baker Mayfield had a touchdown as well. So pretty crazy night when it comes to rushing the football. 2 teams who are known for it get you 9 total touchdowns. So good game. When it comes to the wide receivers, the Baltimore Ravens, they've been struggling a little bit with Marquise Brown and, their offense and just, passing the ball. But, honestly, Mark Andrews came back and finally he got 5 catches for 78 yards and 6 targets. Marquise Brown, really quiet game, had to deal with some drops, but then you got a touchdown in the fourth quarter. So you got 2 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. On the Cleveland side of the ball, Kareem Hunt led with 6 catches in 77 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones had 3 receptions for 74 yards on 5 targets, and then Rashard Higgins had 6 catches for 68 yards and 1 touchdown on 10 targets. So, Jarvis Landry is pretty quiet. He had 6 catches for 52 yards, but overall, a pretty crazy game. It was fun to watch. I mean, in my one league that I always reference on the podcast, we had, the 2 guys in my division going, tonight, or last night, I should say. And he was down by 30, I want to say it was like 30-something points, if I'm not mistaken. And it was looking pretty bad. And all of a sudden it got to the point where Lamar Jackson was going off and he lost by 4 points. But I wonder is because Lamar Jackson left the field because of having quote-unquote cramps. My guess is he had Mother Nature called, had to take care of number 2, and then came back on the field. But I think that, it could have legitimately been that he had cramps, but I don't know. I mean, usually when players go off the field that quick, they got to take care of some bodily functions. So who knows? But overall, this is a good game for Monday night. So with that being the case, let's go into all the waiver wire pickups for Week 15. Now I'm going to start with the quarterback position. And honestly, my number 1 quarterback right now, the pickup is Jalen Hurts. he is 13% owned. He had 167 yards passing and a touchdown on Sunday, but he gave you another 106 yards on the ground and another rushing touchdown. So, I think that because he gives you so much on the ground, he has a safe floor. Now, this is only one game sample size, right? Obviously the passing could be a lot better, but he's one of those guys that can be a true dual threat that gives you a safe floor. He does get Arizona and Dallas in the next 2 games, so if you're playing in a 2-quarterback league, might be a guy that you decide to start because of the possibility of a safe floor and that offense looking a lot better with Jalen Hurts in there because of the dual threat capability. So I think he's a decent guy to pick up. My next quarterback is Mitchell Trubisky. He's 15% owned. He plays Minnesota and Jacksonville in the next 2 games. He had 31 PPR points on Sunday, and he goes against Houston. So now he goes against Minnesota and Jacksonville, like I said, in the next 2 games. So you look at options, you look about who you can stream to get you the most points possible based on the matchups. And honestly, Mitchell Trubisky, he's averaging about 37.6 pass attempts per game. Since he's been back, he's thrown 7 touchdown passes. So I don't think, like I said, it usually can be ugly if you're watching the games, but this is, like I said, this is like Baker Mayfield this is like Blake Bortles from 2017, where he's not a very good NFL quarterback, but because of the roster structure and the offense and the garbage time, it becomes to be a decent fantasy game. And just like last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick, you're going to have quarterbacks that have good matchups that could get you some fantasy points to help you win a championship. So just because of Mitchell Trubisky, don't feel like you can't play him, just because of, the ups and downs that he's been dealing with all season long. And then my third quarterback I just talked about, Baker Mayfield. Now he's 32% owned. He goes against the New York Giants and New York Jets in the next 2 games. Now, on Monday night, like I said, he was 28 for 47 for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then he had a rushing touchdown. Now, he's been playing unbelievably well. He's been, one of those guys who stayed consistent for the last few weeks. We had a few weeks where he had single-digit fantasy points. Now he's just on fire. Now, I know the Giants have a pretty tough pass defense, but, this is the same Giants defense who shut down Russell Wilson. So that's what makes me a little bit concerned about Baker Mayfield, but it's still something that I don't want to bet against Baker Mayfield. I think that in the last 3 games, he showed you consistency. So I think that he definitely can be a streamer this week against the Giants. So those are my 3 quarterbacks I think are good waiver wire pickups. And running back, these are a lot of names that are kind of probably 1-week rental type of guys that, are getting more playing time due to the starter either being out or just not producing. And now my first running back on my list is Lynn Bowden Jr. Now this is the wide receiver running back for the Miami Dolphins. Now Myles Gaskins is supposed to be out for week 15 as well. So with that being the case, you kind of look at what options you get from a position that you really need or you need like a boost for. And I think honestly, Lynn Bowden Jr., he's only 1% owned. Now, he did carry the ball only 1 time for 2 yards, but he got 7 receptions for 82 yards on 9 targets. So, what I'm saying is, I think, DeAndre Washington's another guy on my list of both Dolphins running backs, and he's 19% owned. And on Sunday, he had 13 carries for 35 yards. So, I'm trying to think of a guy who, if you're in PPR formats, who's going to be the better option for you if you really need a flex or some upside, because I want to try to, this is win or go home now. And you can't be timid on playing certain players because of being fearful of the production. You have to play these guys if it's your best chance to win. If you can't find anyone better on the waiver wire, you don't have anybody better on your bench. It's all about opportunity. And for him getting 9 targets as a running back, now I understand he does not run the ball. He didn't run the ball very well, but he's a hybrid wide receiver running back. So maybe against the Patriots on Sunday, he gets a little more opportunities on the ground. But I still think that if I had to choose between Lynn Bowden Jr. and DeAndre Washington to start, I'm going to play Bowden Jr. This is my opinion. But those are the 2 guys on my list. Now going to the Cowboys, Tony Pollard. I've been saying this name for a couple weeks now. I still think if you're a Zeke owner, you have to have Tony Pollard as a handcuff. But Tony Pollard is 20% owned. And on Sunday, Tony Pollard had 11 carries for 39 yards. Now, Zeke only had 12 carries for 48 yards. Like, this is Zeke. This is not the Zeke that we know of. Like, this is a very mediocre production of what Zeke is. I mean, Zeke is a guy that should be averaging about 18 to 25 PPR points per game based on his running ability, his pass catching ability. Now, like I said, Dak Prescott has been, a real hit to him because they just don't. The offense is not the same, and their offensive line is not the same. So, honestly, I mean, is it going to be more Tony Pollard going forward? I don't think so. But when you see the carries with Zeke only getting one more carry than Tony Pollard, I mean, it makes you wonder, like, is Tony Pollard maybe a good flex in deeper leagues? I don't know, but just something to monitor. Our next running back is Carlos Hyde. Now, he's 24% owned in the same situation that Zeke and Tony Pollard are in. So, Chris Carson on Sunday had 12 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. Now, he's still dealing with some foot soreness and everything like that. So, Carlos Hyde, he had 15 carries for 66 yards. So, he led the backfield in carries. Now, this could be just because Chris Carson is still trying to recover from his foot injury. And I've noticed when I watch the Seattle Seahawks games that Chris Carson comes, he plays, but it looks like when they get close to the goal line, he's the guy that is going to be in the game. So that's why, obviously, Chris Carson is a back you want to own. But Carlos Hyde, it's definitely, based on his production he had on Sunday, it's not a bad flex if you're in deeper leagues just because he's getting the opportunities. I mean, it's right here. The Seahawks are a run-first team, and he got enough carries to make me feel okay about if I need to play him in a pinch, in a flex, I would. And then my last running back is Ito Smith. Now, Ito Smith, he's only 3% owned. And on Sunday, he had 11 carries for 42 yards. He had more carries than Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley had 6 carries for 19 yards. Ito Smith right now is just a better running back. I know Todd Gurley has the name. He's definitely a talented player. But right now, Ito Smith is the more elusive guy. It's just true facts. I mean, Todd Gurley definitely is the guy that's going to get the goal line work and the touchdowns. But I think Ito Smith, if Todd Gurley doesn't score any points or any touchdowns, then he doesn't really have a good fantasy day. So he's touchdown dependent, where I feel like Ito Smith is not, where he's good out of the backfield as a receiver. He definitely can rush the ball. So I think Ito Smith is a decent play there. They play Tampa Bay though this weekend. They're the top rush defense, so that could be a very hard matchup to play Ito Smith. But just something to look at. Now, going on to the wide receiver position, my number one wide receiver right now is Nelson Aguilar. Now, he's 27% owned. On Sunday, he had 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Honestly, since week 11, he's had 35 targets. He's still third on the Raiders with overall in target share. Now, he gets the Chargers in week 15, so a decent matchup. I think, he's the guy right now. You got to think about, obviously Darren Waller is the main target, and then I think obviously Nelson Aguilar is the second one in the rings of what it is now. So I think that Nelson Aguilar could be a good pickup. He's very volatile. He had 11 targets a couple weeks ago. He had 9 targets this week. So I mean, I think it's definitely a decent pickup. So hopefully it'll be a good pickup for you that you can play him with confidence. My second wide receiver is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, he's 15% owned. He has 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. He still continues to be the second, in target share for the Packers behind Devontae Adams. Now, when Allen Lazard came back, there was a chance that Allen Lazard was going to take over that number 2 wide receiver role. However, the Packers are still trying to get him back to full workload. But it may be a little too late. I think that, look at Allen Lazard on Sunday. Only had 3 targets. So is he playing 100% healthy? We don't know. I mean, it's still based on his snap count and his target share. It doesn't look like he's 100% healthy yet. But we only got 2 more weeks of the fantasy season. So hopefully he'll make some production there. And then my third player on my list was Chad Hansen. He's the Houston Texans wide receiver who had a pretty good game, but I took him off this list because he reverted back to the practice squad. They put him back on the practice squad on Monday. So Chad Hansen for me is not a guy that I'm even going to go after because I think that'll be a wasted waiver wire pickup. And then fourth is Russell Gage. Now he's 11% owned. He had 5 catches for 82 yards and 7 targets. He had 20 PPR points on Sunday. Now, I think Russell Gage is a good player to have if Julio Jones continues to miss time. If Julio Jones is out against Tampa Bay, I think Russell Gage continues to be a decent pickup, obviously because Kyle Ridley is number one. And Hayden Hurst has not had very good games the last few weeks, so I think Russell Gage continues to be the second in the target share. So I do think that could be a decent outing for Russell Gage this week against Tampa. Then my fifth wide receiver is James Washington. Now he's 3% owned. On Sunday, he had 3 catches for 29 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. Now, the reason why I have James Washington on this list is because Deontay Johnson. So Deontay Johnson has been dealing with a lot of drops this season. He had 2 drops on Sunday night. And Mike Tomlin is known for saying, look, if you can't catch the ball, we're going to find somebody who can, regardless of who you are. So that touchdown that James Washington had would have been a touchdown to Deontay Johnson. But, Mike Tomlin's not going to deal with that. Mike Tomlin wants people who are going to catch the ball consistently be on the field. So this is just a speculative ad. I don't think that it's somebody that you're going to go and pick up and play. But you never know. This may be one of those boom or bust type of players where you're like, you know what? I just need something to happen. I'll play him just to see. But I think James Washington is a decent enough pickup just to see. And then my next wide receiver is Rashad Perriman. Now he's 17% owned. Now he had 3 catches for 26 yards and 6 targets on Sunday. An awful game. Denzel Mims being out, you thought that maybe with that being the case, the production would be there, but it wasn't. Now Denzel Mims comes back. They do play the Rams though, so I don't think this is a guy you go out and pick. It's just a name to put out there just in case you need somebody to play. But Rashad Perriman didn't have a good game in week 14, and then plays one of the top defenses in week 15. I don't know, man. I don't feel good about it, but I still got to do my due diligence and put these names out there just in case you're looking for options. And then my last wide receiver is Gabriel Davis. Now on Sunday he had 3 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. And honestly, he leads the Buffalo Bills in touchdowns with 6 touchdowns. So take that with a grain of salt if you want, or whatever case you want to make of it. But he's been doing a lot better because John Brown has been out. So when John Brown was out, you saw an uptick with Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley. But it looks like John Brown is trying to practice this week and try to come back for week 15. So if that's the case, do you really want to play Gabriel Davis if you're trying to win your semifinals? I'm not going to play that game. If you're in a deeper league, then yeah, that's something that you may have to consider. But if you're in smaller leagues, Gabriel Davis may be a guy you add just to keep your other opponents, in your league to get somebody else on their roster that they could play. This is the time of year where you're not going to have as many waiver wire pickups from your team, because if you have we have what's called a suck ball. So we have 10 guys in our league, and the 6 guys go to the playoffs, the 4 guys go to the suck bowl. Like they have their battle to not come in last place. So there's always going to be waiver wire pickups throughout the season. Or throughout these playoffs weeks, even if you're in the playoffs or not, because you're fighting to not get last place, because we give out a trophy if you lose the league and all that stuff. And it's just something that you try to have pride and try to win every single week. So most leagues should have something like that where you're having people pick up, waiver wire guys, and you don't have people check out too early. So, but it happens where rather than having a fight against for a player for, 10 different players or with 10 different league mates, you may have, right now there's 4 teams left. So you may only have 4 guys going after waiver wire targets. But, it's just one of those things where this is the time of year you want to play defense. You try to look ahead to other players and maybe defenses and all that, because you want to make sure you have the best roster and try to get ahead of the curve. But this is what you do in the fantasy playoffs. Regardless of how many people are still active and playing, you always want to play defense and make sure the other team doesn't get a player that they could use against you to beat you. And now going on to the tight end position, I have Jordan Reed. He's been on my list for a few weeks, and he's owned in 14% of leagues. He does get Dallas and Arizona and the rest of the playoffs. He didn't have a very good game on Sunday. The whole 49ers team didn't really have a good game overall, like just the team overall. But he had 2 catches for 13 yards and 5 targets. I still believe that Jordan Reed, he's going to have these up and down games. But I do think that because of the target share, because of the offense, now Deebo Samuel's now back out with a hamstring, could give you an opportunity for Jordan Reed to get more targets. So that's something that I still think Jordan Reed still should be added in most leagues if you really need a tight end, if you don't have any of the top 5 tight ends. And then my second tight end is Dalton Schultz. He's 25% owned. Now, he had 3 catches for 34 yards on Sunday. Now, this was the least amount of targets. He had 3 targets. So this is the least amount of targets he's seen since week 5. Now, you get San Francisco, in week 15. And not the best matchup, but it's still somebody that you could add if you need somebody that, that gets consistently targeted. So that's what you want. Tight ends that continue to get targeted, that you've seen consistency throughout the whole season. Dalton Schultz has been that, even though the production has not always been there. Now, going on to my next tight end is Irv Smith Jr. Now, he's 5% owned. On Sunday against Tampa Bay, he had 4 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets. Now, Kyle Rudolph did miss this game, so this gave more opportunity for Irv Smith Jr. Now, the Minnesota Vikings do play the Bears in week 15, which isn't an awful matchup. I think that, it's definitely determining if Kyle Rudolph plays. If Kyle Rudolph plays, then I'm going to back off and fade Irv Smith Jr. a little bit. But I still think Irv Smith is really talented. I still think that he's still someone that you could stream if you had to, if Kyle Rudolph is out. But somebody that I wanted to mention going into week 15. And my last tight end on this list, coming from the same game, is going to be Cole Kmet. Now, Cole Kmet is only 5% owned. He's a tight end for the Bears. On Sunday, he was 4 for 41 on 7 targets. Now, there's 2 games in a row that he's had 7 targets. And honestly, he's averaging 11.4 PPR points per game, in the last 2 games. So that's definitely a good thing to see. They get Minnesota in week 15. So if you're looking for a tight end to stream or pivot to, or you have an injury or whatever the case may be, this may be a guy. It's not a known name, but you're looking for production, and that's what you want. Like this week, I had a bye week, so it didn't really matter, but I always play my lineup like I'm playing that week. And I had Noah Fant. Noah Fant, my starter, he got me 0 points. He left the game because of an illness. He wasn't targeted he wasn't targeted at all before he went out of the game. And my second tight end was Hayden Hurst. And Hayden Hurst had 1 catch for 7 yards. So that's how bad tight end is this year. There's not consistency. So you want to find anything you can from production standpoint just to get points. You hate to see a position get a goose egg, and sometimes it happens. And it might not be the biggest names out there, but at least they're going to get you from having a goose egg. So that's it for today's episode. That's all my top waiver wire pickups for week 15. Hopefully these guys can help you win a semifinals, so you get you to the championship. So, it's one of those things where you also got to look at what players get dropped. If certain players get dropped, they may be better than players that you're going to add. So always look at what your fantasy league mates are dropping in order to pick up free agents. So with that being the case, on Thursday I'll be previewing the Thursday night football game and what my starting sits will be for that game. But also hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. And then if you like to follow us on social media, you can find us over on Twitter and Facebook at the Gridiron Pod. We're on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So with that being the case, hope you get all your top waiver wire pickups for week 15, and we'll see you on Thursday. Take care.